Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Golden's Guide. I'm really excited today to have a friend of mine and a colleague on. You're really going to enjoy meeting her. She is, like all of us, an up-and-coming entrepreneur, and she's doing very well. Her name is Jennifer Mann, and her company is called In Her Court. So let me tell you a little bit about her. The founder of In Her Court, LLC, she specializes in helping women through financial chaos and confusion. Most importantly, and I know this about her, I know this to be true, she wants all women to know that they're not alone, because so many of us, feel like when we're looking at money that it has been a man's world before, and it's really time that we get educated. She's all about that. So whether it's, getting a divorce or looking at before you get married or just money in general, she's your girl. So I cannot wait for you to meet her. She is a keynote speaker. She does a lot of program development in and around Greenville, and she's highly lettered up, all those letters behind her name and all that. We'll talk more about that. But in the meantime, welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's just jump right in. I mean, so women, who really comes to you? Who finds you? I mean, who's like your ideal client?
Well, my ideal client, like the reason why I created In Her Court, is usually a woman who has been married 10 plus years, usually sacrificed their career to stay home to be the caretaker, and not really as knowledgeable about the finances as their spouse.
Right.
And had the rug ripped out from underneath them as far as getting divorced or facing divorce or contemplating divorce and not knowing what's what and really needing support and education.
Right.
But recently I've had a lot of couples that have come my way, which I love too, if they can get along and it be amicable, if at all possible.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's women.
I know that you do a lot of work with women going through divorce, but I would want to know, for women who are getting married, what are some things that you would really, because I think, and I mean, and maybe I'm just, speaking for myself here, I don't know that women really think about their finances when you're going into a relationship. I mean, we're just all lovey-dovey and we're not thinking about, things could go haywire. So, if I had a daughter at this point, I would be making sure that she was so financially literate and had her own fund, even if they were going to commingle. But what would you advise women who are getting married, maybe especially older and younger women?
So I have a daughter that's 22.
Okay.
And she's pretty financially literate. I don't know that I can take all the credit for that. My husband is pretty frugal and very vocal with our children about that. But similar process as far as being young and first marriage, second marriage. It's really about being present and not just coming to the table to have a conversation about their finances at whichever stage. Before getting married, I would say, to make sure you know everything there is to know about your finances, even young or older, or first marriage or second marriage.
What about if you're planning on getting married, your to-be, your husband or wife to be, knowing about their finances as well?
Oh, yes. That is definitely a conversation that you need to have before you get married. Of course, no one
does.
No one thinks about it. You don't want to plan for a divorce when you get married, or you're not contemplating it as you're walking down the aisle, but because you're all full of pheromones and rainbows and sunshines, but it is something that both need to have a discussion about, and it needs to be listed: debt and student loans and investments, and how you want to invest in your future if it's first marriage. And it's definitely something that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I knew someone, this was years ago, and I think she had maybe 50,000 plus debt, and chose not to tell her husband. And actually, they're still together. Imagine that. But yeah, that's. I guess there should be, how you always hear about, couples counseling before marriage or something. I don't know, since I've never done it. Maybe I should have looked into it. But that's a joke, everybody. But I'm wondering how much money is included in even couples counseling, I'm guessing not that much. I mean,
I know that it is a big topic once the relationship starts to break down. And so, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving any legal advice. Just throw that disclaimer in there. But I have heard that you can, and I've seen where you can do a post-nuptial agreement and it about the finances, and kind of to remove that obstacle in the relationship. And sometimes, that I've seen that work in counseling sessions, but I don't know how deep they go into actual finances,
right?
Other than the communication barrier portion.
Well, I know you talk about, there's the top 3 money lessons that you talk to women about. Tell us about those.
So top 3, I would say, is 1 is investing. So knowing what investments are, how to invest, to have your own retirement. Even there is a way to where if you're not the big breadwinner of the household, that you can still have your own 401k and IRA. And so knowing all of the ins and outs of that portion, knowing about debt, credit card debt, the percentages, your student loans. And the third thing is life insurance. So it's pretty much planning for the future, but just really being knowledgeable.
Say more about life insurance. I mean, I think people think about it, but maybe not when they're young.
Yes, it's cheaper when you're young.
Of course, yeah.
But you don't want to have to ever use it, but you get married, and my husband and I, we have a policy that if something happens to one of us, it pays our house off. So, buying a house together is definitely something you need to look at.
A big thing.
Finding someone to get life insurance. Yeah,
that would definitely be.
Before you have medical problems.
Yeah. And I also heard you talk about that another big thing is knowing where your financial docs are. And when you say financial docs, what is it that we need to know where they are and why?
So I saw this a lot when I worked at an investment firm before I went out on my own. Clients would have a spouse pass away. And it would take a while to bring all of that in, finding every employment where they worked and finding all those accounts and pulling them in, and the death certificate, finding the life insurance, and all these little pieces that were just kind of like cookie crumbles everywhere. You really need to have at least a list or a safe or something where you have fireproof, to where if something happens to me, this is where this is, and so it's accessible. Otherwise, it just sits out there, and then I think it goes to the state.
When you work with people, do you have those lists so that people would know, what to what to kind of get? I probably need to make an appointment.
I give it in a binder, and it's kind of
Yeah,
It's
because
like your
I don't think
financial
people,
life.
I don't think people really think about, there are, it gets pretty legal, I guess, depending on whether you have a will or not. And yeah, where are all the
Mm-hmm.
papers? And that's not a time that you really feel like hunting and looking and, going through all that. So,
Especially for women, I know for me, it's like emotional.
sure.
So that emotional portion of it is so overwhelming that I don't want to deal with anything else,
Mm-hmm.
especially if I had to find it, dig for it, and
Mm-hmm.
it would be exhausting. So kind of prepare for the
Right.
unexpected and have that list and have
Right.
everything all in one area. Or if you have a financial planner or an advisor, going to those meetings, the annual meetings and
Mm-hmm.
quarterly meetings, and sitting down so you have that relationship with them too.
Right.
And you know that if something happens, you can go to them and they know where everything is.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. When you're talking to women, what do you think I think sometimes there's shame about money, about having it and about not having it. I mean, what do you think is hardest for women, when you sit down and talk to them, to be honest about or to share or to question?
So mindset is a big thing, which, as an entrepreneur, you have to kind of dig into that, your relationship and how you feel about money or having it or not having it, whatever. But for women, clients that I've seen in the past is kind of embarrassed that either they stepped away from a career and then they're not sure how they're going to get back into a career or how they're going to work again, and just that they should have been more involved.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if there's a lot of pieces of the financial puzzle that they weren't aware of,
Right.
that they discover later. And it is a little bit of, I don't know if it's embarrassment, but it's just kind of like,
I should have known.
Yeah.
I should have. Yeah. Yeah. I think that happens a lot more than we think. Yeah. Hindsight's 20/20, isn't it? And I don't know. Why do you think, since you're involved with talking to people all the time about money, why is it so hard for us to talk about money? I mean, what is your opinion on that?
Well, if it's lack thereof, then there's always an argument on how you think it should be spent, and the other side has a different opinion. Or typically, the spender marries the saver. It's never like saver. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a saver. Or it is definitely a spender.
So it's kind of the way people attract, you mean?
Yes.
Huh.
So
interesting.
It's, one spends more than the other, and that typically is the worst arguments.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all know money arguments are probably
they're like
number one. I guess probably money and sex are probably
I think money might even be up there above.
Bigger than sex. Yeah. Well, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. And then there's a lot, like if your net worth is higher and it's not really about the debt, then it's buying investment or investing in things and moving money and buying properties or rental houses or cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and that kind of stuff.
See, I don't know a thing about that.
And most people don't. And then money starts moving around and they're like, I don't even know what this is. What is this? And then, then you have to have that conversation. Yeah. Or taking out a 401k.
If I think about, any shame around money, I think it's that the education I don't have. So I'm glad you're here talking about it. And I think there are a lot of people out there like me that are ashamed that they don't know more than they do, it's a hard thing, especially, depends on your generation too. I think younger people now are, I think women in particular, younger women are way more involved in their own decisions and financial decisions and that kind of thing. But I think there has been, like from my generation, it wasn't, it
The
was
roles
never,
were different.
it was never really encouraged,
It's like, I got this,
know what's
you got
going
that.
on,
Yeah.
So.
Which is, I'm guilty of it. My husband, I've tried to get him to come work with me, but he won't, which is probably good. But you
don't want him working with
no,
you.
I really don't. But he is really, really good at budgeting and saving and like projecting it out.
Right.
Before I even learned it,
Mm-hmm.
he's really good at it. So I'm guilty of it, of, just being like, okay, you handle the house, I'll handle my business.
Mm-hmm.
And, if my business isn't doing so well, then it's like, I need you to handle both.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guilty of it too. And I have to realize I got to practice what I preach. And then I step back up and I'm like, just kidding. I'd like to be involved again.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's easy to do because it's uncomfortable. It's tedious. It's kind of like exercising. It's got to become a habit. You got to do it every day. You really have to focus on what you spend, where it's going, where you're every little.
Speaking of, you just brought up the B word. I mean, budget.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody hates that word.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah, especially now. So, I mean, what do you think? Is there any tips you can give? I've tried several times to do a budget, and it just doesn't. I don't know if I'm not doing it right or if I'm just don't have the will to stick to it. What do you tell people that are like, okay, I'm doing a budget,
So I have, I have in her court, and then I have in their court, and I have in your court.
Mm-hmm.
And in your court is for women that are pre or during or after divorce, so I can kind of help them budget, because they have maybe never had to be financially accountable for their day-to-day spending.
Right.
So I do about a 3 to 7 month program, kind of walking them through that. And so a lot of it is, what's your goals? What do you see? How do you want to see yourself in a year?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Like, what does that look like for you? And then we kind of mold it around that.
Right.
So it doesn't feel as much like a budget.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a lot of tracking expenses, and if they're in saving and trying to track the saving, and then if there is something that's in their goals that we need to set aside money for, then it's helping them tweak that to find it where it's like, I don't know where my money's going, and then we kind of tweak a few things here and there and move it over.
Well, that's a whole nother thing right there, looking at what you're spending money on. I mean, like, it's like getting real honest with yourself, and
it's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful. I mean,
I'm sure. Well,
it just goes.
And I know that you are, and I know this about you. I mean, you love to support women on all levels, but I think you were to do like a group girl budget thing, so that maybe with a glass of wine or with a group, maybe it wouldn't be so daunting.
Yes, that is a good idea.
So
if we just got all my Facebook group girls together and we all did our budgets together once a month.
So you have a Facebook group.
I do.
Awesome.
So my last name is Mann. So of course I have to play off that. So it's a man's guide to a woman's finances.
Ooh, I love that.
It was a man's guide to a woman's divorce, but then I realized that nobody wants to be a part of
that.
Well,
and I think too, there's so many since COVID and everything. I think more women than ever before are becoming entrepreneurs. And there's so much that women entrepreneurs don't know about money, about taxes, and I saw that, all that was in your information, tax projections and solutions around that and budgeting. I mean, I don't know any entrepreneur that probably couldn't use, some help. You may want to put together just like an entrepreneur, package or something, because I think there's more than ever now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, but that might be more of a CPA thing.
Really?
But I know some people who need that. But so the tax projections that I do is kind of implications that it has on dividing your assets and projecting them out.
I see.
Maybe one day I'll learn more about the other part of it, but
well, I still think you have
painful.
a lot of information that you could be sharing with groups of women. So
yes.
I'm gonna really encourage you on that. Well, we're almost at time, so I know you talk about financial life analysis. What is that? What is?
So that typically is done during divorce, but I have done it for coaching to kind of show them where their money's been going over a certain amount of time.
Right.
But in a divorce, it shows patterns over time. So it's
patterns.
It's very typical for all of a sudden you're getting a divorce and you're broke. But, you've been living a very nice lifestyle for years. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden you have no money. And it's like showing where that money, how your life was 3 years ago before divorce was even mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then how that's kind of trending in the wrong direction and why. Mm-hmm. And then also you have to show, there's a financial declaration. So you have to show what your expenses are now as like a party of one and not a party of four.
Sure.
And that has to come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times it'll come from pulling that information, spending from 3 to 5 years.
Right. Well, before I let you go, like I said, I know that you're so interested in supporting women. And so, how did, and I know you're really passionate about it. So how did you get into this?
So I have 3 daughters. I like to think that is one of the contributing factors. I coached competitive cheerleading for a very long time. I miss it every day.
Oh my God. I bet that's awesome.
And it's just where my heart is kind of being that advocate and the support system. And like, if I can go through all of this, like I can totally help you through this.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give them a guiding hand through life's most terrible situation.
Yeah. Well, anything involving less money is pretty terrible. And it's terrifying too, as well.
Heartbreaking. I mean, like it's devastating.
Yes.
And then it's hard to see the path and that it will be okay, because in that moment is, your world is imploding. So I like to be kind of the guiding light.
Well, that makes sense, for you being a coach for, women and young girls, and that's kind of a natural progression. And women understanding about their money, there's nothing else more important right now, I think, in the world, as we're finding ourselves. Because I think COVID has, I don't know, what would you say? I think COVID has created more separation within couples than ever before.
The rates are definitely higher. But yes, I think if you were not really getting along before COVID and then you got stuck in quarantine together, that probably did not help it much. And then you were just waiting for it to pass and I can't take it anymore. So that's
yeah, I definitely think it's up. Well, any final thoughts that you want to let our listeners and watchers know about? Of course, we want to know how to find you, but any other tips that you feel like that we missed that you really want people to know?
The only other thing, I guess, would be, so for my clients and for my group, because I have women that haven't been in the workforce in quite a long time.
Right.
I partnered with Green Compass, to give them kind of an opportunity to be able to create their run money, which is what my mom always called it, run money account, if they're going through or thinking about it or know it's coming or intuition, spidey senses are like feeling it.
Right.
I was excited to bring that option to them to where they can, doesn't matter, how long you've been out of the workforce. That was
right.
Great to bring
can
that.
anyone join that group, or
yes.
is that? Oh, okay. Well, let us know how we can find you. I know inhercourt.com. Is that right?
Yes, inhercourt.com.
Inhercourt, and then on Facebook. How do people join the Facebook group?
You just request.
What's it called again?
It's A Man's Guide to a Woman's Finances.
A Man's Guide to a Woman's Finances. I like that. We'll put that in the show notes too.
Perfect.
But that's awesome that you created that. And then I would imagine people in the group support each other as well. So.
Yes. And it's, some just educational tidbits about finances. The last thing I put in there was a clip from Made off of Netflix where they talk about what financial emotional abuse is, which is very important. If you don't know what that is, it's
I know that movie is like, that is, and it happens all the time to women, all the time.
It does.
Yeah.
You get frozen out of the assets. It's like a power control thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I hate to see that, but.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being one of the women out there that are, carrying the flag and educating other women, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you.
So you may have to come back, and we'll do part 2, go a little bit deeper. I think there's a lot to say about patterns, looking at our patterns with money as well, and why we're scared of it, and scared of having it and not having it. I think that's a cool topic as well. So,
I agree.
My sign out here is always from if you've listened to my my song, it's We're Still Here. So as always, thank you for being here, and we're still here, and we'll see you next time.
I am here after